Your host for this evening and for the series over the next few nights is Vadim Butov. May I introduce Vadim to you all?
Well, good evening, everyone. You all look like a university class sitting behind those tables. Well, welcome to Ancient Mysteries. And I would like to thank our precious audience and those who were a little bit delayed for coming. It's the most inconvenient entrance, the most embarrassing entrance anywhere in Melbourne, because you have to come from behind the presenter. Normally you come from the back. But please feel no embarrassment at all. Our visitors are not late, so they are slightly delayed. Okay. We are most delighted again, as I said, to see you all come to this seminar. And at first, let us get acquainted and explain to you what this program is all about. My name is Vadim. I'm a Russian by birth, educated in the United Kingdom and Australian by choice. I and my family have been living in Australia for many years now. My children grew up in this country. And I've got a wife. She is quite academic. She's got a Doctor of Philosophy degree and lectured in a number of European, American and Australian universities and colleges. I'm a doctorate student of history. And therefore you will see the display of a little bit of my research coming throughout these lectures. But you will ask a question: why would a couple academics invite the community in Romana to come to this program? Well, we do these programs occasionally so that we could understand what people think, so that when you meet with students on an academic, on a college bench, you would know what to tell and what is practically applicable to the modern Australian society and modern Australian community. In the upcoming programs and seminars, I'll tell you more about myself. But in the meantime, let me ask you a question. Could I see the hands of those who came to this program because you received an invitation? You've probably seen those blue, beautiful invitations. Could I see the hands who came because you received those invitations? Wonderful. Thank you very much. And who came here because someone invited you to come? A friend or a neighbor or an acquaintance gave you a call? Could I see your hands? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Maybe someone saw our advertisements in the local newspaper. We didn't advertise these meetings as extensively as we would love to have done, but we've spread quite a few invitations, mentioned about our program in the local newspaper a fortnight ago, in some tea papers, and our friends invited people. But I'm here by an invitation of a very special man. He was our MC tonight, and it will be for the following programs. Peter Hughes, a very special man. And I will tell you in the course of our lectures why this program actually happened. In the meantime, please accept this program as a public educational seminar. It's an educational program. Those of you who read the invitations could see that we have the Middle East, we have Israel involved, we have Jordan, Saudi Arabia, we have a lot of Middle Eastern countries involved in our lecturing. And some of you may think maybe this program is suspicious and religious. Well, our program is suspicious but not religious, okay? It's educational. Therefore, I want every participant, every person who is present here to relax. What we're going to share with you in the next 10 programs is a lot of excursions to the world of history, archaeology, natural sciences. We will connect every program to the most recent developments in global astronomy, physics, astrophysics, chemistry, biology, history. We'll talk about medicine, physiology, and many other interesting things. And of course, you will ask me a question. What's the purpose of these meetings? What's the goal of inviting the community to come along and listen and hear? Well, one of our goals is to help you in your emotional and spiritual development. A lot of Australian doctors, having done extensive research on the Australian society in the past 2 decades, discovered that the best approach to make someone well, happy, and satisfied with life is what we call a holistic approach to life, which means that you need to upgrade someone's quality from the health when it comes to healthy lifestyle. And by the way, Australians and Chinese are the two most sports involved nations on the globe. On this planet, if you take the percentage of people who are involved in sports and are interested in healthy lifestyle, it would be the Chinese and the Australians on the planet. So the health awareness of Australians is very, very high. I also believe that we could upgrade the quality of our lives socially, and we could do it financially. We could do it emotionally, we could do it spiritually. So there are many different aspects which help modern humans develop and upgrade the quality of their lives. But this program cannot, in 10 meetings, definitely cannot answer all questions and help you in all spheres of your personal development. But what we will definitely endeavor to do, we will try to help you in the betterment of your spiritual and your emotional spheres of life. I'm not going to spend too much time on health or finance or social aspects. There are other experts in these fields, but where I have my expertise, and that is ancient history and emotional health, I will try to help every person who comes, and I will do my best. I'm not giving you any promises, but I'll do my best that after 10 programs, all of you will feel a positive change. We will call it a micro upgrade in your everyday life, and we will try to do that at no cost to you. We want to benefit you. This is a program for the community. By the way, tomorrow we are going to give everybody the first gift. So you've probably in your invitations have read that we are going to give you presents. Also, there was a big television project a number of years ago in Australia, done by my friend, a multi-million-dollar project which produced a number of amazing documentaries and films. It's called The Beyond. It's a set of DVDs, 24 DVDs, which we are going to give to every person who is present here for free. And we are also going to give you other books and leaflets. So we'll definitely pack your library and your video library as well. So that is just a brief introduction of what is waiting for you in the next few programs. Of course, some of you may say, well, maybe there is some sinister underground reason why this is all done, and why are they doing it for free? Well, because somebody said, well, free is cheese in the mousetrap. Maybe there's a mousetrap about these meetings. Well, may I suggest that we will run these meetings without any cheese in the mousetrap and without any underground reasons. We are absolutely open, transparent, and we want you to know that we want to benefit the community. And if these seminars will upgrade the quality of your lives, we will have done our duty. Okay? Our program tomorrow at 4 o'clock is going to be called The Mystery of an Ancient King's Dream. At the beginning, as I usually make it, I make a disclaimer. English is not my native tongue, and I will make mistakes, grammatical and lexical. So please don't throw raw tomatoes at me or eggs unboiled, but just give me a generous concession. Okay, I'll do my best so that everything that I convey will be understandable. Also, I have another ailment. I speak fast. My thoughts are like a machine gun, like an Israeli Uzi machine gun, 1,000 bullets a minute. And therefore, please, if I start racing, then throw something at me. Okay, I'll slow down. Okay, so the only raw eggs I'll tolerate are the ones that will slow me down because I speak very fast. Okay, so are you ready for the first lecture? Tomorrow, the mystery of an ancient king's dream. We will take you to ancient Babylonia. Tomorrow, we will travel to Iraq and visit the rivers Tigris and Euphrates, look at some archaeology discoveries which were made in the Middle East, and we are going to explore a prediction of the future. Because today, modern societies want to have confidence in the future, because it seems that the history of humanity is like a sinusoid. It goes up and down, up and down. There is the First World War, then there's the time of peace, then there comes the more bloody Second World War, then there comes the time of peace, but then there's the Cold War, the West and the East, the Soviet bloc and the NATO looking for reasons to bite each other. Then there seems to be the destruction of the Soviet Soviet bloc, and then there's a time of peace, then there's the escalation of violence globally, then there is a time of peace, and people are asking a question. Is there confidence for the future for modern mankind? And how can we get that confidence? Well, tomorrow we're going to explore one of the most interesting predictions of the future which you've ever heard. And we are going to look at it from the historical perspectives. You'll be definitely fascinated. You will not want to miss tomorrow's program at 4 o'clock. By the way, after the program tonight, don't leave in haste, because we have delicious refreshments prepared for you, and we would like everybody to enjoy. So if you come to these meetings and you forget to eat your dinner or supper, remember, we'll always look after you. And at the entrance, at the registration, you've probably received this list of paper, and it gives you the location of every lecture. Now, we are on this heritage precinct, squeezed between the Port Nepean Road and Verdun Street. And this facility has two major halls, this one and the one just 20 meters from here. Now tomorrow we're going to meet in the old Shire offices, because these halls could be booked by other organizations. So please have this piece of paper on hand, keep it in your car, so that you will know precisely which hall to come. So when you see Dromana Community Hall, it's here in this venue. It's 6 meetings here. If you see old Shire offices, that historic building on Port Nepean Road, which is just 20 meters from here, it's where those meetings will be. And we will have 4 programs in that venue. Okay, so please keep this sheet in your mind, and you will, again, please forgive me, I almost pronounced this word incorrectly in English. Instead of S-H-W-E-T, I almost pronounced it S-H-I. So please keep this sheet in your car, okay? All right, our lecture tonight is called Loneliness. Is there a way out? Sociology says in Australia, there is a growing problem. It's the problem of loneliness. And loneliness is a problem of many people across generations, different ages, social groups, income groups. It's a problem of many retired people. By the way, they did some research in a number of retirement villages in Australia. People often go to the retirement villages looking for a community and for fellowship. But they discover that even in the retirement villages, a lot of people are suffering from bitter loneliness. Even communities which are called to battle loneliness are still not coping with it. The problem is not only with the elderly people, it could be younger people, and they are also somewhat disorientated. In many families, people feel very lonely. Surveys show that the families in Australia often just not live but coexist, and sometimes spouses, a husband or a wife, even in spite of running around children, of a presence of another human being in their lives, they feel extremely lonely. And loneliness is most prevalent in big cities, in big megapolises. In the country, it's less. In megapolises, it is huge. And that includes Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, Brisbane, Newcastle, and other places. Well, loneliness. Is there a way out? Often our young people are battling with this problem and feeling deep vacuum in their hearts. They're trying to fill it with alcohol and drugs, with means which create only a visibility of happiness. But then follows bitter disappointment. Some young people choose a path of crime, often shedding blood of their victims along their pathway. Well, let me suggest to you during these meetings a book which I will use as my point of reference. Now, in every research, there's always bibliography and there's always points of reference. So if you're looking for answers, you need some points of reference. You need some authority. If you do a scientific research for a bachelor degree, for a master's degree, for your for a Doctor of Science degree or a PhD degree, you will have a bibliography. I will always refer to different sources. Everything I'll present to you, I will substantiate from the world of science or from ancient books. Now, one of the points of reference, one of many, will be a Christian Bible. Now, the reason why I chose, somebody would call it a Jewish Bible, others would call it a Christian Bible. The reason is very simple. It's because this book is laid at the foundation of Australian culture. This country was built, and this country's culture was built on this book. And for that reason, I will use this book as one of many points of reference. And by the way, a lot of people nowadays ask a question: can a modern person trust this book and the information which it contains? Is it trustworthy or not? Well, if you travel with me to the Middle East, you will find that in the past 200 years, literally hundreds of diggings uncovered a lot of amazing facts. If you go to Egypt, the country of the pyramids, the Great Sphinx, which occupies half of the football field, the Great Pyramid of Cheops, which is 146 meters high, one of the greatest structures of ancient time, the Great Nile River, the Egyptian history, Egyptian religion, Egyptian pharaohs, the art of mummification, their treasures like the treasures of King Tutankhamun. Egypt was one of the cradles of human civilization, one of the birthplaces. And well, it is in Egypt where my friend Dr. Randy Janker from Siegfried Horn Archaeology Institute recently found an inscription about the existence of an interesting historical figure. Now, in this book, you find a story in the Old Testament about King David. Now, King David is mentioned only in the Old Testament. And for literally hundreds of years, people had no extra biblical evidence from the ancient world about the existence of such a man. And some critics said, well, David probably is only a fairy tale. David and his son Solomon, they must be created by human beings, but they never existed. Well, in Egypt, in the temple of Karnak, it's the largest worship center in the world, in its square, a gigantic center, all in ruins today. They found an inscription about King David. Egyptians recorded about King David 1,000 years BC. So if you travel to Egypt, you'll find the story of Joseph. It's another great story. And all of these discoveries show that the information contained in this book is historically reliable. Well, let's go to another place. Let's go to Ebla. It's located in Syria. The Australian government discourages travelers to go to Syria today because of a lot of bloodshed and fierce fighting. As you know, hundreds of thousands of people have been killed in Syria in the past 10 years. Well, it is in Ebla where a few decades ago, archaeologists found the largest library of clay tablets. In fact, they found over 20,000 of these tablets. And on these tablets, surprisingly, they found some names of people and cities which are also mentioned in the Jewish Bible. For instance, you probably heard about a man by the name of Abraham. Have you heard about Abraham? Well, some people said he never existed. Well, in Ebla, they found an inscription where the Eblites are talking about their trade. They used to trade with Abraham. They found the recordings. They also found the name Isaac. Have you heard about Isaac? He's another historical figure. And also, the citizens of Ebla, they had trade agreements and they kept the archives of their trade with many surrounding cities of the Middle East, including two great cities by the name of Sodom and Gomorrah. For a long time, Sodom and Gomorrah were considered to have never existed. Well, the Eblites mentioned them in writing. So the Old Testament of the Jewish Bible is not the only book which mentions Abraham, Isaac, Sodom, Gomorrah, David, Solomon, and many other historical personalities which have impacted the development of humankind so much. By the way, this is the Dead Sea. The amount of salt in Dead Sea is over 35%. You are almost unlikely to drown there. The big valley filled with burned sulfur, with some traces of some supernatural gigantic fire, and a lot of cities were uncovered in the place called Bab Edra in Jordan. We don't know precisely which of those cities were Sodom and Gomorrah, but a lot of archaeologists believe that among those cities buried under a 2-meter layer of ash lie the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah and their remains. On the other shores, on the Israeli shores of the Dead Sea, in 1947 they found the so-called Dead Sea Scrolls. An Arab shepherd boy, a Bedouin boy, was looking for a lost goat, and as he was wandering around these caves and threw a rock inside, he heard the sound of broken pottery, and inside he found the ancient scrolls, inscriptions. In fact, they found hundreds of them, and they are the most ancient scrolls of the Old Testament. When the scholars compared those texts with the later versions of the Old Testament, they discovered that there were no changes, and the copyists used to copy the ancient writings very, very carefully. At the foot of Mount Sinai, in the monastery of St. Catherine, which is not too far from Dead Sea, the Englishman Robert Tischendorf, at the end of the 19th century, found the most ancient manuscript of the New Testament. It's called the Sinai Codex. Today we have over 2,000 manuscripts of the Old Testament and over 20,000 manuscripts of the New Testament. And by thoroughly comparing them, we come to a conclusion that this book is not only historically reliable and tells us about real people who lived in times past, but it's also unchanged, and it came to us through hundreds and thousands of years as one of the best preserved ancient documents, ancient books. So we are going to use this unique book as our point of reference at many of our lectures, but tonight let's go to the world of science, and this is what this book said 3,500 years ago. It says that when the deity or God made the world, he hangs the earth upon what? Upon nothing. Now, if you go to ancient Babylonians, Sumerians, Egyptians, they will all tell you that the earth is flat and it's sitting either on 3 whales, or as Indians believed on 3 elephants, or as Chinese believed on a great dragon. But this was the only ancient document which said that the earth is hanging in space upon nothing. Thousands of years before the astronomers were able to prove that the earth was not flat. This book said the earth is hanging upon nothing. Let me give you just another text. This text is 3,500 years old. It says, and those who are a little bit delayed, please come in. We are looking forward to seeing you, because my lecture is yet to have its best content. Come in. Welcome. Remember, at our seminar, no one is late. You're delayed. Okay. Okay. It's a pleasure to have you. Please come. Feel yourselves at home, and remember, we'll have refreshments after the meeting, and we have tables and chairs, everything. We just want you to feel welcome and comfortable. My name is Vadim Burov. I'm a doctorate student of history. I have a wife and 2 children. My wife is also an academic. But generally speaking, I have a lot of good qualities, but in Australia you don't tell about your good qualities, because then you will be disliked. You need to look very modest and humble in Australia. When he gave to the wind its what? Its weight. Now, for hundreds of years it was believed that the atmosphere is weightless. Well, today we know that the atmosphere has weight, and because the atmosphere has weight, planes could fly in the air. It is possible for the planes to fly. Well, now let's go back to our main topic. Loneliness. Is there a way out? Loneliness is a huge problem of modern society. And to loneliness we see the attachments of depression, negative emotions, the feeling of guilt, different fears, all kinds of psychological and psychiatric disorders. We have all sorts of emotional problems. And for those who are a little bit delayed, I will remind you that the goal of these meetings in the next 10 programs is to upgrade the quality of your emotional and spiritual well-being. Well, 4,000 years ago, a lonely traveler is wandering in the desert in the Middle East. His name was Jacob. At home, he had a quarrel with his brother. He deceived his own dad, and now he is an outcast. He cannot return to his own home. And he is walking in the desert, hungry, lonely, abandoned by all. And at night he falls asleep, and suddenly he sees a strange dream with a fiery ladder connecting the earth and the skies, and the angels going up and down. And he hears this voice: I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. He heard a voice that there's someone in the universe who said, I will not leave you. I will not abandon you. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. In ancient times, people believed in the existence of the supernatural forces which made the universe. And Jacob was one of them. He believed that it was the creator of the universe who got in contact with him and said, I will never leave you. But a question arises in our audience. Could a modern and intelligent man do what? Can you read it for me? Believe in God. And I can understand why people, whenever they hear this concept, they try to set themselves at a distance from it. Because in our minds, whenever the deity or the creator is mentioned, in our minds it's always attached to an organized religion. And now the problem with Australian society, and I don't think it's a problem, I think it's a historical inheritance. The Australian society historically was formed as ships of convicts came from Great Britain to the land of exile. And in the minds of the pioneers of this country, a clergyman was sitting next to a judge who sentenced him to go to Tasmania. And the negative feeling about organized religion is in Australian blood. And it's been since the establishment of this country. Also, historically, in the Middle Ages, and even in recent times, you've heard about the Royal Commission and the problem of pedophilia in religious circles, which happened in the past several decades, and 15,000 victims were explored by the Royal Commission. Australians today are extremely skeptical whenever they hear anything that is connected in their mind to religious or the items of religiosity. For that reason, during these seminars, I will promise it to you that we will not connect our discoveries to any religion. We are going to talk about the emotional and spiritual development, and we will look at these concepts and at these terms purely from the scientific and historical viewpoint. We're not going to look at these concepts from a religious point. So please bear in mind, this is not a religious program. We are distancing ourselves from a religious connotation, and we're looking at the scientific realm so that we could improve our scientific, spiritual and emotional well-being. Because all the surveys show that the Australian society is very anti-religious, but Australians want to develop spiritually, and we are going to develop spiritually in our mind. Well, could a modern man believe in the existence of a creator of the universe? The ancient book in the Old Testament says, "Lift up your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these? He who brings out the starry host one by one and calls forth each of them by name, because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing." And these words were read from one of the Apollo spacecrafts when it circled the moon. One of the American astronauts opened the ancient book and read these words. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Well, could we believe these things? I come from an atheistic background myself. I told you that I'm an Australian by choice, and I and my family have lived in this country for many years. But originally I was born in the Soviet Union, in a country where 99.9% of the population were atheists. We did not believe in the existence of anything supernatural. We believed that everything could be explained by science. And for that reason, there was no place for these concepts in our minds. I come from an atheistic background, and as a young growing boy and a teenager, I was asking myself these questions. I went to the writings of many scientists. Sir Isaac Newton, when I was a child, I read many of his quotes. The great Englishman, the great man because of whom we fly today in space. Isaac Newton said, if you drink from the glass of science, with the first drink you'll become an atheist. But when you drink the glass to the bottom, on the bottom you'll meet God. That's what Isaac Newton said. When you drink from the glass of science, when you do the first drink, you'll become an atheist. But when you drink it to the end, you'll become a believer. Well, let's look at science. Let's travel with the best spacecraft. This spacecraft is no longer flying. It's a space shuttle. Let's go to the Soyuz spacecraft and go to the International Space Station and look around the universe. Can we find anything in the universe? Well, most of you, as little children, would ask your parents, Mom, Dad, how many, stars are in heaven? Well, in the days of Herodotus, the Greek historian, they believed in Greece that there were 5,119 stars. But as knowledge increased, everybody realized that there are many more stars in the universe. And 2,500 years ago, the ancient prophet Jeremiah in the Old Testament said, as countless as the stars in the sky. Ancient people realized you can't actually physically count every star in the sky. One scientist said that if you count all the grains of sand on all the beaches and the river banks of the world, you'll have an approximate number of stars in the universe. One of my friends, an Estonian scientist, decided to put grains of sand in a little glass, which he borrowed from his wife. And he was very meticulous. Estonians and the Finnish, they're very meticulous, let me tell you. He took a grain of sand, drop it down and count and write down. And he would spend an hour every day counting the grains of sand, looking how much time he'll take to fill a glass and how many grains of sand will fill the glass. In 6 months, he filled probably 10% of his glass. And he was still counting. And then he got so tired of this exercise, he washed it with water and decided not to continue. Now, try to count all the grains of sand on all the beaches of Australia, on all the beaches of California and around the world, and you will agree with the words of the ancient prophet that the number of stars is absolutely countless. They're like the grains of sand. What you see here is the picture from Hubble Space Telescope. You see the stars, okay, and you see the bright stars. Now, these are not just bright stars. Each star here is a galaxy, and every galaxy contains at least 100 billion stars. It's a lot of stars. The universe is enormous in its size. It's very difficult to understand how great and how majestic it is, and there are many stars. In recent decades, they realized that the universe is actually 40 times bigger and greater than they thought in the days of the first flights into space by Yuri Gagarin and also American astronauts. They realized that there are rivers of stars, canyons of stars, mountains of stars. The universe is a gigantic structure. And we know that there are not only many stars, they're also separated by huge distances. 3,500 years ago it was asked, is not God in the heights of heaven? And see how lofty are the highest stars. Well, the stars are not many, but they're also separated by giant distances. We know that our nearest neighbor is the sun, S-U-N. Sun gives us life, it gives us warmth, and Australia gets a little bit too much warmth from the sun sometimes, especially today in Melbourne. But there's another star which is our nearest neighbor. It's not far from the solar system. It's called Alpha Centauri or Proxima Centauri. Its distance is just 41.6 trillion kilometers from us, which is 4 light years, which means that if you travel to that star with the speed of light, it'll take you 4 years to get to our nearest neighbor. If you travel there with the modern spacecraft that we have available, the maximum speed, 57,000 kilometers an hour, it'll take you just 120,000 years to get to our nearest neighboring star. Okay? So that's our nearest neighbor. Can you imagine not only the vastness of space and the numbers of stars, but also the fact that they're separated by huge distances. They're flying with great speeds. For instance, our galaxy, the Milky Way, is traveling in space with a speed of 110,000 kilometers an hour. Now, when you go to a Hume Highway and travel to Sydney, what's the speed limit normally? 110. Now, multiply that by 1,000, that's the speed of the Milky Way system. That's how fast we're flying today in space. Only gravity holds us on this planet. Gravity holds Australians walking upside down on this planet. So we have many stars. We have great distances, huge speeds. And yet you observe the laws of heavenly mechanics. We take measurements by the movements of stars. We checked our years, months, weeks, days, hours, minutes, and even seconds by the movement of stars. You see precision and perfect order in the universe. Leonardo da Vinci, a great Italian artist and scientist 500 years ago in Italy was reading these words: "The heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech, night after night they reveal knowledge." Da Vinci also mentioned these words: "He is before all things, and in him all that is in God, all things do" what? Can you read it for me? Hold together. So Da Vinci comes with an idea of the first engine. Once he walked into a church, and the local priest was very unhappy when he heard Leonardo da Vinci praying. Leonardo da Vinci stayed in church, and he looked up to the images and said, "Oh my Lord, the first engine." And everybody was thinking, what is he saying? Leonardo da Vinci was talking about the first reason. If this universe has a beginning, it must be a very intelligent beginning, because it brings order. It brings a great universe. Well, you may ask, well, if the universe appeared by a giant explosion, the Big Bang. Have you heard about the Big Bang theory? That roughly 15 billion years ago, there was a giant explosion of energy, and the universe appeared. Albert Einstein, with his discoveries, he brings this concept to us. But can you imagine, could an explosion bring order? Let's go to Avalon Airport, where they have this giant service base for many airlines. And can you imagine the Avalon engineers bringing together the million parts of, say, a Boeing 737 of Qantas Airways. And they bring it all on Avalon Airport's runway and put a couple tons of dynamite, and then boom comes the explosion. Everything flies in the air. Everybody is in horror. And a few seconds later, you see a glazing, shining new Boeing 737 standing in front of you. Is it possible? Will you fly that aircraft? Only if the explosion is controlled, then this explosion could bring order. For instance, when they build a tunnel, they put explosives, they make a controlled explosion, and the controlled explosion helps build a tunnel. Like you remember this argument 2 days ago about the Westgate tunnel. Or they drill it, or they break the mountains to put a highway. So the explosion brings order only if it's controlled from outside. If the explosion is uncontrolled, it brings chaos. So the Big Bang, if it was uncontrolled, it could never have produced an orderly universe. But because there must have been someone above space and time, someone who initiated the Big Bang or the big explosion, then we have such a beautiful universe. And this brings us to a thought that the Creator must exist. Well, let's now drop from heavens to earth. Let's go to the beautiful Australian beaches and Australian nature. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. In the New Testament, in this ancient book which I'm using as a point of reference, it says that you can actually see the eternal power and divine nature of the Creator by looking at His creation. Nature is like a book, and it is possible to read the book of nature. Now, nature, of course, is beautiful. We admire the colors of nature. We take pleasure in the sounds of nature. We delight the taste of nature. We get excited about the beauty of nature, about its smells, about everything it brings to us as human beings. Everything in this world, from the highest mountain to the littlest drop of dew, talks about a great artist who once painted these beautiful pictures. In the book of Psalms, in this beautiful masterpiece of ancient Jewish poetry, King David said 3,000 years ago, "Glorious and majestic are his deeds, and his righteousness endures forever." This nature is glorious and majestic. But it's not only glorious and majestic, like Port Phillip Bay, when you walk out and you look at these beautiful calm waters full of sharks. Sometimes you think, well, this world of nature must have some good things about it. Take the snowflakes. By the way, I am a Siberian by birth. I am not only a Russian by birth. I was born in Siberia. In my home city of Magnitogorsk, in the eastern slopes of Ural Mountains, we had 102 days with positive temperatures a year on the average, and about 263 days a year with negative temperatures. So I come from a city when I was growing up with 9 months of negative temperatures and 3 months of positive temperatures. And in January and February, those negative temperatures would drop down to 35, 40 below zero sometimes. Well, snowflakes, they are marvels of geometry, and they preserve life in the cold parts of the world. You will never find the twin snowflakes. They're always different. And this planet Earth, in its development, displays so many majestic laws of nature. Take the Australian eucalyptus trees. They pump water all the way up to over 100 meters up in the sky through a very complicated system of capillaries. They are unique skyscrapers in nature. Could they have appeared by themselves? Take the photosynthesis, the green reaction in green plants. Now, today we are breathing a substance called what? Oxygen. And when you exhale what? Carbon dioxide. Now, the green plants, they absorb carbon dioxide and release what? Oxygen. Okay. Of course, they breathe too. They need a little bit of oxygen for their own existence, and they accumulate carbohydrates which feed us. So we eat and we breathe because of green plants. Now, 3 decades ago, actually 3.5 decades ago, in the former Soviet Union, a number of scientists decided to replicate the reaction of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a complex biochemical reaction. It contains 70 small reactions. So the scientists said, let's combine these reactions together and create artificial photosynthesis. And if we do that, we will be able to feed all the hungry people in the world, and we will be able to receive an unlimited supply of oxygen and even plant life on Venus or Mars or other planets of the solar system. The experiment took a number of years, and the book which appeared because of this experiment was called The Summary of Life. But this experiment was unsuccessful. The best academics were trying to combine those reactions together, create photosynthesis, but they failed. Now, a question. If the best minds, the best academics, the best biologists, and the best chemical specialists could not recreate photosynthesis, could it make itself out of nothing? Out of vacuum, in the complete absence of mind? Well, take our planet. Once I met an academic in Moscow. He's a doctor of physics, and he said, Vadim, for many years I was an atheist, but thinking about the position of our planet, I came to believe that God must exist. I said, what's the reason? Why do you think so? He said, well, take our planet and bring it closer to the sun by just 5% of its distance. You know what will happen? We will all burn. We'll all die because of heat. Now, he said, take our planet away from the sun by just 5% of its distance. You know what will happen? We're going to freeze. We are located at a perfect distance from our sun. And he said someone must have considered all the factors, the size of the sun, because if the sun was bigger, life would not have existed on this planet. If the sun was smaller, we would have frozen. So someone must have taken into consideration the size of the sun and the size of planet Earth, and also the precise distance from the sun. And he said, just by looking at these simple factors, I, an atheist of many decades, now come to believe that there must be a creator who placed this planet at a good distance. And it was not without a purpose. This planet is not just like a clock mechanism just to rotate around the sun and tell us how many years we've lived. He did not create it to be empty, the ancient book says, but formed it to be what? To be inhabited. And look at the inhabitants of this planet. Look at the birds with their navigation machinery in their minds, when they could fly for thousands of kilometers, cross oceans and continents. They today surprise every pilot. An eagle flying up 3 kilometers in the sky, seeing a little mouse. Who gave him such good eyes? I wish I could have the eyes of an eagle. Take the bees. Oh, the bees are so wonderful. And Australian and New Zealand honey are just magnificent. And Let me tell you, one American scientist observed the behavior of the bees for over 30 years. And during his research, he came to some stunning conclusions. Now, there is a working bee who travels to a meadow, a field, and collects nectar. And then she comes back to the beehive and starts doing the belly dance. By the way, the belly dance doesn't come to us from India, it comes to us from the bees, because ancient Indians in the belly dance copied the bee. So the bee would belly dance before its co-workers, other working bees, and then the host takes off and flies exactly to that field, to that meadow where she took the sample of nectar. By the way, there are certain little baskets on the paws of a little bee. Everything is designed for carrying the nectar. Well, the scientist was trying to detect what's happening. How can it tell by belly dance of where to fly and the distance of flight? Often he would take a bee which was doing the belly dance and hide it and still observe the rest of the bees flying precisely where the other bee had just been. And then he came to this conclusion. It's using logarithms. It's using high mathematics to tell the distance. For instance, if it made 15 circles with a belly dance, it means that the flight should take roughly 7 kilometers. He did hundreds of calculations using high mathematics. Now, logarithms. Which years of school do you study logarithm in Australia? In the first year, second year, third year? Logarithms. In high school, in years 11 and 12. Now, who taught logarithms and high mathematics to a bee? Who taught her the architectural design? Now, any Australian who goes to a university of technology and wants to become an architect will have to learn the beehive, because every good architect will tell you that a beehive is a perfect sample of architecture with small weight, huge ability to hold weight. And what the bees do is absolutely stunning. We could talk about the bees for a long time, but let me, I believe that a moment will come in our lecture tonight, and let me tell you, our plane will land roughly in 10-12 minutes, okay? Do you still have gunpowder in your guns tonight? It's an old question coming out of when I teach university students, I like to exhaust them to the point when they say, please stop, we need to stop, it's too much information. Well, if you feel I'm giving you too much, please stop me or throw something at me, okay? I'll be okay. Ask the animals and they will teach you, the ancient book says, and the birds of the sky and they will tell you. Let the fish in the sea inform you. Which of all these does not know that the hand, and you read the next phrase, of the Lord has done this. Well, these words were written in our point of reference in the Jewish Bible 3,500 years ago. Now, the world of nature tells us that there must be a mastermind. There must be a great designer. But a question remains in people's minds. Wait a minute, Vadim, wait a minute. Didn't we read in our textbook that we came down from the trees? Now this is just our distant relative, an ape, okay, a monkey. That it could be your great grandma. Well, that's the way I grew up. I grew up thinking that a man, though well behaved, is at best a monkey shaved. Well, I suggest to every person who wants to know the truth to read a book. The book is called The Origin of Species, and the author is Charles Darwin. Many people who believe in the theory of evolution, they don't realize that Charles Darwin, when he produced his theory, he produced it only as a theory, as a possible explanation of how life came into being and how different species developed. But in his very book, The Origin of Species, Charles Darwin also points to some problems of the theory of evolution. One of those problems which Charles Darwin mentioned was the absence of the transitions. If the evolution is happening today, there must be a transition from one species to another. But those transitions are not visible, they're not detected by scientists. On the contrary, we see the disappearance of species, like the Tasmanian devil, for instance. We know that hundreds of plants Thousands of animals are vanishing on this planet, but the new ones, the new species, aren't being produced. And so this is a big problem. Secondly, the problem is with bones. Now, some people said, well, they discovered some bones of ancient people, and those bones tell us that there were ape-like human beings, that at first human beings were like this, and then they were standing up, and then comes the Homo erectus, a man who walks straight, and then Neanderthal man, and then finally, you and me, Homo sapiens, a man intelligent. Well, if you collect all the bones which have been discovered globally in the past 200 years to prove that we come from monkeys, those bones you can put in a giant traveler's suitcase. That's all on the entire planet. Now, if ape-like beings existed, we must find many more. We must find a lot of bones, but we haven't found too much. The Australian man, or Australopithecus, which was believed to have been the most ancient man, the most recent research shows that it was a big baboon. It was not a human being. The Piltdown man, discovered in 1912, in 1952 was proved as a counterfeit. Several ribs were taken, and the jaw of a monkey, ribs of a woman. They were painted carefully and put in the ground in England in a place called Piltdown, and it was discovered that it was a counterfeit. The Nebraskan man, a tooth was found in the state of Nebraska in 1963. In 1960 it was found. In 1963 it was proven that it was not a tooth of a man, it was a tooth of a wild American pig. You find a lot of these bones, and they encounter enormous problems. The bones themselves cannot be used by scientists as undeniable proof that we as human beings came down from the trees and that we came from the monkeys. The same comes to us from the world of genetics. Now, you know that you look like your parents because you have genes. And today it's quite popular when a husband and wife are looking at a disobedient child, they're arguing themselves. And the wife says, it's your genes. Okay, it's the fact that he is such a naughty boy is your genes. So we actually now know that 50% of your character is determined by your genetics. And well, what does genetics tell us? Well, genetics tells us that it is impossible for the macroevolution to happen. Now, let me distinguish between macroevolution and microevolution. Macroevolution is when a monkey becomes a human being. Microevolution is changes within different monkeys and changes within different humans. It is possible for human beings who live on different continents to change visibly. On the African continent, you have got people with very dark skin. In the Mongoloids in Asia, they have very charming personalities, and even when they're 60, they look as if they're 25, but they have narrow eyes. The Scottish, because they live in the absence of of sun, they have lots of freckles because they don't have enough melanin in their blood, and they are very white and they burn very quickly when they come to Australia. We change because of the environment in which we live, the climate, the different migration periods, the ice age, and many other things. But all humans in the world, regardless of the color of their skin, are all humans. And all monkeys are monkeys. All butterflies are butterflies. So microevolution, evolution which on a small scale is possible. But I don't accept macroevolution because it is impossible from the viewpoint of genetics. If you make changes in the genes, you will get either a disease or death. Now, make changes in the genes of a child, and a dead child will be born, sometimes with great deformities. Have you heard about Down syndrome? Down syndrome is a genetic disease. Okay, one of the pairs of the chromosomes malfunctioned, and you've got a child with huge developmental ailments and problems. You probably heard about Hunter syndrome. Have you heard about Hunter syndrome? A little child, grows up so quickly that at the age of 12 or 13, he's like an old man. Okay, it's a horrible disease. The Americans invented medicine to battle with the Hunter syndrome, but the annual cost of that medicine is almost $1 million. And so genetic disease is a big problem. No one has ever been able to produce a new kind or a species artificially, and today in the observable world we have never detected any species become a different species or get into a transition period. Even the self-origin of life is an impossibility, because the classical theory of evolution says that the life must have made itself. Now, is it possible? We know that we are constructed of many construction materials, and the foundation for life is a molecule of protein. Now, we all need protein for life. Life is based on protein. Now, you know how protein appears in your blood. So there is the DNA molecule. Let's say you'll be a DNA molecule for me, okay? Will you be a DNA molecule? So you're a DNA molecule, okay? Carolyn, you'll be an information RNA molecule, okay? And David, you will be a ribosome, the factory of protein. And how do I pronounce that? Ines. Such a beautiful Ines. Ines, it's such a beautiful name. So you will be a transportation RNA molecule. So the DNA molecule contains the information about who you look like, your color of hair, your future, everything. The information RNA molecule comes to it and reads the information, and then takes that information to the ribosome, which is the factory of protein. The ribosome gives electrolytic signals in your cell to the transportation RNA molecule, which brings the amino acids to the ribosome. And that's where the protein molecule is made. Thank you very much for helping me in the experiment. So it takes sometimes between 2 to 10 seconds, as biologists tell us, to form one molecule of protein in your cells. Now, it takes only a millisecond to destroy it with an electric signal or sunlight. Now, the theory of the self-origin of life in the primordial ocean says that there was a lot of electric storms, lots of lightning, and lots of sunlight when life appeared. Well, life could have been destroyed easily long before its appearance. And now, for life to exist, you need a combination of factors to meet each other randomly at the same time, and that requires literally a miracle. In 1960s, a group of American scientists tried to produce one living molecule of protein. And you know what happened? They produced a deadly poison. Okay, they tried for several years. The experiment was closed. It was unsuccessful. Today, a lot of scientists don't even try, because they realize that for us as humans to produce one living molecule of protein is a factual impossibility in our modern development, even in spite of all the discoveries we've made in the past 100 years. Well, that asks a question. If we, with the best minds, cannot produce one living molecule of protein, and we need many proteins to exist, how could it have made itself? The self-creation of life is a logical and scientific impossibility. Life must have been created from a great master source of energy and mind and design. Sovereign Lord, the ancient prophet said, you have made the heavens and the earth by your great power and outstretched arm. And what does the prophet add? Nothing is too hard for you. The ancient prophets told us that this being who made the universe, who created space and time, is he is not only omnipresent and fills the whole universe with his presence, but he is almighty. He has enormous forces. He is omnipotent. He has enormous sources of energy. He is the one who originated the universe. He is the one about whom Thomas Aquinas was talking in the Middle Ages. Many great philosophers, Leonardo da Vinci and others, even Albert Einstein, allowed the possibility of a supernatural origin of the universe. He is also omniscient. He knows all things. And even the very hairs of your head are all what? Numbered. So if you have hair, or even you have no hair left, he knows everything. He is omnipotent. He can do all things. He is omnipresent. He fills the whole universe with his presence. He is omniscient. He knows all things. Now, question, who are we as human beings? Now, every human being will develop, and every man and woman will develop based on your perception of self, of who you see yourself. Who are you? Now, I was born and raised as a child who believed that I was a cosmic accident. I was a highly intelligent animal. I was a unique bio-robot who developed in the random collision of evolutions. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is mankind that you are mindful of them? Human beings that you care for them. Who are we as human beings? Well, one of the greatest teachers of all time, a Jewish rabbi, Jesus Christ, who lived on this planet 2,000 years ago, said, so don't be afraid. You are, and can you read the next phrase for me? With more than many sparrows. The ancient book says that human beings are special. Every person who is present here, man and woman, you are special. You are not animals. You are not machines. You are not cosmic accidents, and I am not too. We are children of God. And we did not come down from the trees. We have a cosmic origin. And life was created. It did not create itself. And another beautiful phrase, because God is what? Is love. Now, many people today in the modern communities are very scared of the concept of God, because in their minds God is a tyrant sitting on the cloud with a lightning in his hand. Well, the ancient book says God is love. Love is something that every human heart is longing for, every human heart desires. And it is from the depth of the universe that this Creator wants to approach every human being. 3,500 years ago, great words were recorded. Now acquaint yourself with Him and be at what? At peace. Thereby good will come to you. If you acquaint yourself with the Creator and learn about His plan for you and your life, you will have peace in your mind and in your heart. And any one of us could come to Him 24/7, day or night, and He will always accept, He will always receive, He will always forgive, and He will always give peace of mind, peace and human soul. And often the sunset will not bring disappointments, it will bring hope, and your life will bloom and blossom, and you will be happy. Let me ask you a question. Overall, is the content of our lecture tonight clear to you? We asked the question, loneliness, is there a way out? I believe there is a way out. It's when you discover that besides the sphere of horizontal relationships between you and each other, between yourselves and the world of nature, there's also a missing link, a vertical relationship. And if you restore the vertical relationship, if you build another bridge in your life and connect yourself to this invisible universal power which made the universe, you will uncover a new horizon of existence. It'll bring you inner satisfaction, the feeling of blessedness, joy, and it'll definitely upgrade the quality of your lives. And it'll give you a lot of joy, and you will be happy. Would you like to be happy in your lives? Could I see the hands of those who want to be happy? A simple question. It doesn't require university education to answer that question. All of us want to be happy. Well, if not happy, let's call it satisfied, because in modern society the word happy is often misunderstood. I would ask you a question. Would you like to be satisfied with your existence in this world, satisfied with your life? And I want to. And in the future lectures, I've got 9 more seminars to go. I'll do my best to share as much knowledge as I have so that you would see new horizons, new opportunities, new bits and pieces of knowledge which will definitely benefit your lives, and you will be happy. And now, as gentle music is going to play, I'm going to ask Peter to come and just remind us of when the meeting is next tomorrow. Remember, we have a special book to give you tomorrow. I'm going to bring it, and every visitor will receive it. We have a set of 24 DVDs as a gift for every person who's going to come. And Peter, I think you have something delicious for us in store also in place. So let's welcome our MC and the host of this program. Peter, thank you very much for this program. Please feel free to stay behind and chat. We're looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Please remember, tomorrow we're meeting at 4 o'clock, 1600 hours, 4 p.m. Please come, bring your friends, bring your neighbors. We're going to have an exciting journey tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed. See you tomorrow.
One little detail. privet, I'm trying to think the Russian term. Chut-chut, that's the term. Chut-chut, one little detail. Tomorrow we're meeting in the Old Shire offices. We have this venue Monday, Wednesday and Friday usually, but on a Saturday we meet in the Old Shire offices. The signs that are out front will be directing you to the Old Shire offices tomorrow at 1600 hours, 4 o'clock. I hope that you will enjoy. We've got refreshments for you behind. Thank you for coming, and we look forward to enjoying your company again.